wilted in your hand. Even though you're victim, can't play the victim this time. Serrated blade, decision you made. The pitiful disguise thinly conceal your eyes. Think the world is waiting for you. Think the world is waiting for you. Think the world was waiting just for you.
The actual making of the jewel case and the jacket, artwork and credits and all that kind of stuff. It's cool. We really took ownership. We took over. We sort of had some basic things made up for the first CD. Then we had my Uncle Chris, who's a computer whiz. He put together this design, which looks really cool. I mean, I think it held up really well. But it is a little basic, you know, it's just a free request. Hey, family member, can you throw something together? And, you know, it's really cool.
Think the world is waiting for you. Think the world is waiting just for you.
Our first album, we did basically low budget, low tech computer art for the cover, you know, and we had CD labels and we did that whole thing.
But we then, you know, wanted to really go all out for ourselves.
Imaginary Joe and then the album art, I mean, we just had this creative drive, and we just found ways to make things work with what we had. And I remember going, what was it, Circuit City or whatever, we got the CD stomper and we got the CD thing where we printed. It was the coolest thing. I mean, we used all the world's smallest skyscraper. It was like a really Wichita Falls based album with everything in there, because that's where a lot of all of our ideas and songs and feelings that we had came from here, right here.
So Imaginary Joe, as far as the artwork and everything, pretty cool. We just, the front cover is the Keith Ranch out on Highway 287. It's a house burned in 1975. Two Keith brothers lived there. They inherited it from their George Keith, if I remember right, from reading about it. He was a co-founder of Benny Keith. And so it was built in 1939, two-story house, stone, white stone, really must have been impressive, especially back in its heyday. Out there all by itself, sitting on the hill, just its skylines as you're traveling towards Henrietta, or either direction, but if you're going towards Henrietta from Wichita Falls, there it is to your right. Fascinating. I always thought always saw it because school, we lived in Henrietta, I'd see it every day. Driving to or from, always fascinated, thought it was cool. Well, it's the cover photo.
And what was the other one? Witch's Gate.
And then this is, what was it called? Hell's Gate or something. It's some haunted house on the outskirts of Wichita Falls, down on Highway 287.
It's also known as Witch's Gate.
Witch's Gate or something like that. Something ridiculous. It was supposed to be haunted. And so they run out there with the camera and they snap pictures of this, what's left of this house, the stone framework. And, you know, cool shot. Inside jacket here has got us on the rooftop one of the buildings downtown Wichita Falls, like a parking garage across from one of the Sears locations or something like that. And we're up there. Joe was gone by then, so we had to sort of paste him in up here. And then John Belcher's cigarette smoke kind of almost made Joe look like, hey, if we put him up here, it's like a genie in a bottle kind of effect. You know, Photoshop didn't exist really back then, so this was our version of Photoshop. Kind of working in the imaginary Joe, kind of coming out of a bottle.
I remember that Cam Ainsworth was taking my grandma's, and she still has that camera to this day that we took the shot on top of the old Sears building. She still has that camera. I've seen it when I was looking for all these tapes, where Cam Ainsworth is taking a cigarette smoke and blowing it, and then just that magical trail, and we took Joe and cut him out and put him on there.
Apparently because it had a tragic ending, the guy who masterminded the robbery burned the house down after he was convicted for the robbery and the murder of one of the brothers. He was shotgunned in that house, so as far as I know, he's the only person that died out there. But you know, rumor has it that a bunch of people died. You know, it gets built up, so it turns into some type of an urban legend really for the local area, and it's called Witch's Gate. Apparently, kind of ridiculous to me because it's a cool historical house. It's really neat, but you know, people run with it. So anyway, that's what they call it. And probably stuff goes on out there. There's rumors that witchcraft and all type of stuff, and possibly, but I didn't, obviously not interested in that. I just thought it was cool.
But anyway, you know, all these, Jason had a digital camera, or Grandma McCorkle, his grandma, and Grandma had a computer that could process all this stuff, and somehow they got this glossy paper and stapled it together the right way, and you know, printed off the digital picture. And this was high tech stuff back then. And the two together were going around taking pictures. And this is the grain elevator in Wichita Falls.
How could you laugh when the tears came down? You just stood there and grinned when I was down.
Well, the second one comes along, and it was kind of like, what are we going to do for this? Well, Grandma has a digital camera. So it's like, all right, at that, boom, there you go. It's going to be pictures. You're going to have a real picture for your album cover, because, you know, you could have done that with a old-fashioned camera, but digital, that was like, okay, boom, because we knew, hey, and this is a long time ago. You gotta remember, this wasn't like, well, that's a no-brainer. So they were relatively new. But yeah, you take the pictures now, we can upload it to camera, we'll print it onto CD label, make our, you know, so long story short, the album pictures, the art, well, all that stuff is just as simple as the fact that Jason's grandmother had a digital camera, so myself and him, boom, we're off on location. So we're out, and it's like, what do? You're going to take some pictures. It's got to be something interesting as an actual picture for the album.
And then, you know, some people took random shots of us in action at the band house, you know, recording and things. And then on the back, you know, artwork on the front, Imaginary Joe, band name Revolver. So on the back, the credits, and this is really cool. I mean, I'll get to this in a second. They even, Jason and Matt, with Jason's stuff and his grandma's stuff, they even made, you know, a proper label for the CD, you know, and it's got the songs, you know, going around the edge. And he's actually got Crimson Vision spelled right, because I got to call Jason out on this. He misspells Crimson Vision on the credits down here. It's Crimson Vision or whatever. It's missing the second I. But he got it right on here. It's got the names of the songs going around here. Imaginary Joe, Revolver. And this is another Wichita Falls beauty. This, I believe, is the littlest skyscraper, as it's known. And, you know, there's a whole story about that. It's sort of a tourist attraction in Wichita Falls. And so they got that on there. So we have some landmarks. And on the back of the actual case, it's like an old insane asylum or something, or an old sanitarium, mental hospital. I can't remember. They would probably know.
Oh gosh, you had the old insane asylum that's now an apartment complex that's up for sale.
Yeah, that sanitarium.
I don't know what the deal was with it.
The back cover then is the white sanitarium. Mental asylum, insane asylum was what it was, and it was abandoned for many years, and that's the photo on the back cover.
Some kind of mental hospital or something, they got it on the back.
He's not a pig man, is he?
No, he's not. Just a fat little mental patient.
And it's allegedly, according to some websites online, it's the second most haunted place in Texas. I mean, I think they might have known those rumors. Anyway, that wasn't the purpose. So, hey, you know, that house, which is gay? You know, I think I hadn't heard anything about the name or the legend. What's that? Oh, that house on... Oh, okay, yeah, I know what yeah, that's cool. So me and Jason drive out there, and a lot of fun. You know, we go, it's quite a long walk up the hill to get to it. You're a little nervous because it's technically, you know, it's private property. I'm sure somebody owns it. I can't find out who does. But, so trespassing, there might be some weirdos out here. So it's real... It's an exciting thing. We're trekking up the hill, but we take pictures of it, and I take the cover picture. I like that picture a lot. It's a good angle of it, and I love the stone building and anything. But you know, we wandered around and checked it out. Really cool, really fascinating. Other than the you know, the occultic rumors. So we did that, and then we drove out to the asylum, took that picture, and then we took a picture, you know, downtown Wichita Falls. We went around. So basically it's just, you got a camera, you're just going to take some landmark shots. We're a Wichita Falls band, that's all it really was. And but it kind of, you know, it looks like, oh, you know, witch is gay, haunted asylum. I mean, it was just pictures. It just looked cool. Atterbury Tower is on the inside jacket. We took that picture. I think that was me, because Jason was driving the pickup, and I took that picture from the passenger. And then he took some too. I think he probably the skyscraper, the world's smallest skyscraper is what it's titled. It's a little 2-story building, narrow. You see it on the CD label, but that's what it's called, because it was a joke. Apparently some investor ripped somebody off, and you know, they got money to build a skyscraper on that site, and some guy built that little 2-story building. It was like, technically that's something like that. But anyway, so things like that are what we took pictures of. But that was pretty cool, pretty fun to go on location and take those.
That's
right out here, you can see Atterbury Tower. It's sticking up over that white deal, which is the
right
Allegan
there.
Coliseum on the MSU campus.
Yeah.
Right above that's the Atterbury Tower. Or, in our case, it was the Revolver Tower.
And then back over here, you see downtown right over here. You got the bank building, which is kind of weird. It's out, it should be downtown, but it's right out in the middle, right off camp. And then you got, you know, downtown, which it's really far off. And we used to do, remember we used to do CB hunts and all that through there and stuff when we were like, all right, we're done practicing, let's hang out as friends. That was a cool thing. It wasn't like, go home, we're done with practice. No, it was like, all right, let's go have some fun now. Let's go do car tag. Let's go do all that.
So the second album, like I said, heavier rock. I think it's a really good album, and you know, you can see we were, as songwriters, you know, musicians too, but we're starting to really take off. And to me, you listen to that second album, it's really, you know, gives you an indication of what we could have done. And then, of course, if you've heard that stuff and then you listen to the demos that we had, I mean, we were really just at the beginning, you know, just at liftoff, really. So what we could have done and where we could have gone, we could have really taken off from that point. One example, not only just more experience and getting better as musicians, but the songwriting, you know, it was only getting better from that point, and I think the demos are proof if you hear those, lyrically anyway. I mean, musically too, but like, for instance, Phillips, I mean, like I said, he was always gifted, I think, lyrically, and as having a writing talent, and not just songs, just a writing ability. But then you really see lyrically, I mean, he crafted some really good stuff, really impressive lyrics that are evidenced in those songs on the demos. And, you know, had we continued, it would have just taken off from there.
Cultivating questioners in the garden of my dreams, telling you about everything, one thing it means. It's motivating, turning over, plowing over the dirt. Have to keep my eyes wide open to keep from being hurt. I have to keep my eyes wide open, it's hard to even try and all the while.
On this first CD, it was understood that the order was Philip Harrell, Matt Harrell, Joe Harris, Jason Riley. Jason kind of got bottom billing because he was the last to join, and then I got top billing because I was the singer and the oldest, and the founding member. Me and Joe both founding members, and we could have had Philip and then Joe based on order, you know, Philip, Joe, and then Matt, and then Jason, because Matt was the third to join, and then Jason was the last. Or we could have done it in oldest, and it would have been, you know, Philip, Matt, Jason, and then Joe would have been at the bottom. So we had several ways, it was the agreed upon order because it sort of matched the Beatles. You have vocals and rhythm guitar like John Lennon, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. So, and then the bass player, the other singer-songwriter, sort of Paul McCartney role, that's Matt Harrell. And then the George Harrison lead guitar kind of role goes to Joe Harris, and then Ringo is last, Jason. And, well, Jason probably didn't like being last, and then, you know, as a reward for his efforts in putting together this really cool CD, he suddenly gets top billing. Revolver, drums and vocals, Jason Riley. Really getting out front there. Bass guitar and vocals, Matt Harrell. So, wow, what a shock. Who gets number two? Who gets second billing is the other guy, you know, that helped him and worked on this thing. Lead guitar, Joe Harris. Never mind that, you know, he left before the end of the CD. And then, who's at the bottom? Rhythm guitar and vocals, Philip Harrell. So, I see what you did there, Jason. And, it's funny. And then, as a footnote, it says, vocals on number 5, John Belcher. Then, at the bottom, this is pretty cool, it's got produced, engineered, mixed, and recorded by Revolver. It's true. Photos by Matt Harrell, Jason Riley, and Cam Ainsworth. Oh, dude, all these years, and I didn't know. I didn't realize my name was on this CD. Oh, man. And then all songs written by Revolver. Parentheses, P. Harrell, M. Harrell, Riley Belcher, and then copyright 2001. So we did actually copyright these, sent them off to the Library of Congress, $30 a pop. And so this was a legitimate CD, I guess. Felt like it, kind of sounded like it, looked like it. And that's what happens when you put when you give top billing to Jason Riley, things turn out extra fancy. This was pretty cool stuff, and Jason did a great job, and I'm glad he did it. You know, 20 years later, you have this survives rather than just a handwritten Sharpie on a seat, you know. So Jason did great, and he decided, I guess, to reward himself for his excellent efforts.
But anyway, I'd go over during the day a lot of times and do my recording and lay down my guitar tracks on the stuff that they were recording the night before. Our schedules were pretty opposite. A lot of times I didn't go in to my work or my job at the time at Tarpley Music until in the afternoon, whereas the rest of the guys would be working probably at Sutherland's during the day, and then they were off in the afternoon. So, sometimes I'd go over after I got off, but I remember having a pretty controlling, nagging girlfriend that didn't really want me doing any of this. So I know the guys would tell me stories that people would come over and hear some of my guitar parts. They'd play them, some of the songs that we were working on, and that's where the whole Imaginary Joe term came up, because I was never around, but here's this guitar part that just magically appeared. So anyway, so the story goes.
We've got these liner notes, says what everybody does. Days in December, P. Harrell, songwriter. Vocals, Philip Harrell. Backup vocals, Matt Harrell. Slide guitars, Joe Harris and Philip Harrell. Bass guitar, Matt. Drums, Jason Riley. You know, we wanted to put in all this detail. And let's find some of the ones I've been talking about recently. Your Misery, M. Harrell, the writer. Vocals, Matt Harrell. Backup vocals, Philip Harrell. Rhythm guitars, Joe Harris and Philip Harrell. So rhythm guitars, Joe Harris and Philip Harrell. Drums, Jason Riley. Bass guitar, Matt Harrell. Lead guitar, Joe Harris. So, we wanted all this stuff in here. And the other one I was talking about, Make Believe, Summer's Gone. M. Harrell. Vocals, Matt Harrell. Lead guitar, Philip Harrell. Rhythm guitar, Philip Harrell. Bass guitar, Matt Harrell. Drums, Jason Riley. There was no Joe on here. Recently I talked to Joe about another one, Masquerade, and he seems to think he played on it, and I don't think he did, and Matt doesn't think he did. Let's put it to the test. Masquerade, P. Harrell, songwriter. Vocals, Philip Harrell. Lead guitar and rhythm guitar, Philip Harrell. Bass guitar, Matt Harrell. Drums, Jason Riley. So there's no Joe on Masquerade, and there's no Joe on Summer's Gone. Then Crimson Vision, there was, Joe he just did a sparse amount, so let's see if he's on credits. Crimson Vision, P. Harrell. Vocals, Philip Harrell. Backup vocals, Matt Harrell. Lead guitars, Joe Harris and Philip Harrell. Rhythm guitars, Philip Harrell. Drums, Jason Riley. Bass, Matt. And that's sort of how, I've got a lot of my names on these several times because I was the backup lead guitar player or the number 2 lead, because we had 2 lead players in Revolver, and Joe was the ace and I was, either the number 2 guy or the relief pitcher or closer or something like that, but Joe was the ace of the staff. So we had this ace guitar player, and then I played other leads, and most often on Matt's songs.
Fights really hit an all-time high at the band dump, and I don't know if it was just the fact that you got all these young guys that are trying to work together and trying to do all these things and going in different directions, and all these people coming around and just having problems trying to work everything out with everyone's schedules, or just the sure fact of impressing people. Girls being around probably didn't help.
We would break up. Revolver would break up at the very end of this CD.
But I just remember it being, pretty bad at times. There was no knockdown dragouts, bloody noses, or, bruised eyes or anything. But I remember getting into some pretty intense arguments with everybody. And, Fortunately, I think for us, it just kind of, it really did make us better friends, really, in the end. But at the time, it was pretty intense.
So in the last days of the band, in the waning days, one of the things that really took its toll on us was Jason's prison schedule.
Prison schedule, yeah. I started working at the prison, working nights, so pretty much the 4 days I was working was I was unavailable, and that really took a toll too. That was about the time period where I would sleep all day and play all night, and I got to where I was tired of. It was like band engulfed you, and I would want to leave and just go do something else. And with the combination of that, the prison really did take a toll on the way I wanted to play, and it also, I think, was the starting deal for Joe leaving too, because I was not real serious about the band at the time. But the prison, yeah, definitely hurt the band in many ways. It was good for me at the time, but it hurt the band.
It was good for Jason. It was a good career move. He was making a lot more money and, a job that potentially could go somewhere. So, and we understood that. We understood that it was good for him, but just strictly speaking in the band sense, it was a bad deal for the band. Part of what was difficult about that prison schedule was in the tax office days, our typical schedule was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's how we'd practice. So you didn't get much time to forget stuff or get rusty. You stayed fresh every other night. Plus, you didn't practice back-to-back nights or 3 in a row. Occasionally we did, but for the most part it was broken up so people didn't get too fatigued, but yet you could stay in a rhythm. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday suddenly turns into something completely different because of his prison schedule. You're 4 days of just being completely shut out, and you get rusty, and you get, stuff happens in the 4 days, and then you're lucky to get 2 or 3, if that, sometimes 1 or 2 of his days off where you could do something.
I think Jason's work schedule was really, really difficult to work around when we were at the band dump. He was working at the prison at the time, and I think he worked like 4 days on and maybe 3 days off, or 3 days on, 4 days off, something like that. But either way, it was difficult because when he was off from work, we would be trying to schedule these practices, and Jason would want to, kind of relax, take it easy, maybe go out and hang out with his friends or go do something outside of practicing. And so I remember that being a pretty big challenge for us to be able to get anything done on those days. Work schedules kind of got in the way of that.
The other guys have mentioned a few things here and there, but it's important to note a couple of key details. And one of those was his schedule was 4 on, 4 off. Okay, and then it was night shift. He worked overnight. He would go into the prison at 6 p.m. and he'd come out at 6 in the morning. So you got 4 straight days where that's it. There's no practice. It's closed schedule. It's out of the question. And then, so you're shut out for 4 days. Then on that 5th day, the rest of us are chomping at the bit to go. Let's practice. Well, he's just worked 4 12-hour shifts overnight, and he's tired. So he wanted a couple of days to kind of recover. And then, that puts you at 6 days of nothing. And then on that 3rd day off, he would kind of be recovered enough that he'd want to practice. But then all of a sudden, you've got 2 nights to choose from. And then inevitably something would happen, whether that would fall on a Saturday night and he'd say, well, I want to go cruise camp, I want to hang out with my friends. So those 2 available nights would get shot down frequently. So best case scenario, you have 6 nights that are out of the question, you can't practice. And then take your pick. It's like potluck. Good luck with that 2 days. And so that just decimated our practice schedule, and that really took a toll.
Not too long after I started playing in Revolver, I remember going into Tarpley Music in Wichita and meeting a guy named Mike McAdoo. And Mike was a fantastic guitar player, and still is. And he had just come from the Branson area. He'd been playing with the Osmonds and some other big names. And he was a tremendous fingerstyle player. And I remember starting taking lessons from him and learning the Merle Travis style playing, which, Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed, Tommy Emmanuel, there's lots of guys you could throw in that list that do the Travis picking, Dole Dykes. It's just a long, long list. But it all originated really from the Merle Travis. And, of course, Chet Atkins did his take on it. And so Mike, he was really, really good at that style and other styles. But I was interested in the finger picking because he was just such a tremendous fingerstyle player. And I took lessons from Mike for quite a while. And he actually taught me a lot, not only musically, but just outside of the business world of playing and performing. And a lot of that didn't really rub off till maybe later in years to come. But I remember learning a lot from him. And he was a really nice guy. And I think that he didn't tell me to be a nice guy and performing and trying to play music, but I think it rubbed off that the best way to do things is to try to be professional about it, and being a nice guy, you don't always finish last, like they say, that you can really be a good person and get somewhere, and I think it helped too at the time with my work ethic on the instrument, because I could see someone who really dedicated a lot of time to their craft. And so anyway, that would have probably been 99, 2000, somewhere in that time frame, whenever all that took place.
It started becoming, okay, is Joe coming tonight? He said he wasn't. But I remember one night, and I'll never forget this. It was probably when I worked at the prison. We were working on Eagles tune, and I realized, I knew Joe was great, I knew Philip was great, but there was this one night, and I'll never forget this. The two lead guys, Joe and Philip are going to work on doing these leads, and it was an Eagles song, and it was Lion Eyes. I'll never forget this. I'm sitting out there, and it's almost like the silhouette, like what we're looking at tonight, with the even the air and everything, like tonight, feels like it did, with a little bit of breeze blowing. But you got the two windows like what we have right here, and you have these subtle guitar parts muffled through the walls, and you could just hear this. You can't hide your lion eyes. And I remember Philip and Joe playing these like lead parts, but they were like an octave up. Like Philip was either playing a high part or Joe was playing a low part. They were trying to like do this, and I'll never forget that. It was like, wow, I just remember like, that sounds really cool, and it kind of sparked me again to whatever, I don't know, because I just remember walking out of the practice pad on 31st Street and hearing that.
He just got to where he just wasn't in the same place as the rest of us, and it was a painful kind of deal, but it really worked out in the long run. But that's when things started kind of winding down a bit.
All the parties, we couldn't get anything done, it got to where it didn't matter what night of the week it was. We would try to show up and practice, and you had people show up and kind of felt like you had to try to play your best stuff for them or perform, instead of, practicing songs or writing songs and trying to get tighter as a band. I just remember it being really difficult because of the sheer volume of people.
I remember I was highly pissed at Joe, and I remember me and him actually wrote a song, and we wrote a song together at his house, and he was dating Kristen Botch. And we wrote a song, it was in B, and we wrote a full song, and we were racing back to town to show y'all, and we got pulled over. It was me and him, and there was another car. We got pulled over, and I cannot remember what the song was about or anything, but me and him wrote a song together. It's almost like the Indian song at Shady Lake that Matt wrote, but I can't remember. I guess like the Beatles say, if you can't remember it, then it wasn't that great.
I just feel like that there wasn't that person that needed to be there that was directing the group in a direction that we didn't have management. We didn't have that leadership role, wasn't there. And I know probably maybe Philip being the singer, lead singer, really could have been said to have been more of a leader. But you got to understand that you had all these guys that were around the same age and kind of been growing up together and knew each other before they ever played an instrument. And I think sometimes it's hard to listen to people, especially at that age, being as young as we were, on what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I think that could have contributed in not really having a good leader that we would listen to, even if he tried, or if Matt tried, or Jason tried, or I tried. I was the baby of the band. I felt like everybody would kind of bulk up against it, whatever that may be. So that really hurt us, and all these things are kind of some of my decisions and reasons for not staying.
Then there was, in the latter stages, Joe was seeing this girl, Kristen, I think it was, and, you know, he started bringing her over to all the practices, and that's sort of the beginning of the end. Maybe not just because she was there, but, you know, other things, but that was part of it. And that's sort of in that the whole classic Yoko sense of things, when somebody's got somebody next to him, and she's pretty clingy, and she's right there, she would sit on his amp, and that pissed off Shane, you know, Fats. He didn't like that. I don't remember caring that much. I probably did get irritated, but Fats hated that, sitting on Joe's amp, you know, and same thing with Yoko. Yoko sat on George's amp, and that caused a big, you know, tense ordeal. But so she's right there, sort of pulling the blonde Yoko. I mean, she's just right there. She's sitting on his amp, and you can't, you know, it's just not the same. And when you hear bands like, namely the Beatles, you know, talk about that type of thing, you know, I mean, and it's been that way. There's several examples of that kind of stuff in bands that I've been in, where that is totally a thing, and you have group unity, and you have chemistry, and you know, and then some girl, some woman or whatever, whether it's a girlfriend, wife, and they get in and they cut up that connection. They get in the way of, whether, even if they don't say much, but, you know, having a girl sitting right there on your amp, it just changes the dynamic. You can't really interact with that guy the way you normally would have. So she came in and caused some interference, and then they started having some squabbles and fights at the end. That made it uncomfortable, and and then she started kind of getting on a strict schedule, and that, you know, you're cutting into my 8 hours. Joe will know what I mean. And then, and that's sort of, I could be wrong, but I'm not. It sort of put him on a schedule. You know, it's like, okay, she's going to bed at this time, so I need to be over there, or, you know, I got to spend time with her before, and, you know, it's sort of, and we were out of control anyway. I mean, it's not, I don't totally blame him for that kind of thing, but we would just, we were sort of a rambling out of control, like we'll practice all night if that's what it takes. And there was lots of times, especially at the tax office, we practiced till 2 a.m. and have to go to work at 7 a.m. and it was brutal. But we were willing to do that because we're young, 19, and you feel like there's a purpose to it. Like, we're going to get really good. You know, it's like you see the carrot in front of you and we can do this for a little while. But we kept doing it, and then at the band house days, we did that. We'd stay up late, and, you know, initially we were all into that, but then it starts to wear thin.
So it got to the point where everybody at some point or another was late for practice. It was like we kind of took turns. The worst culprit was Jason Riley, of course. He showed up late to practice more often than any of us, but we all kind of fell into that habit, mainly me and Matt and Jason. And the reason is I recall sometimes I would be thinking, okay, last night, you know, Jason was an hour, maybe even 2 hours late. So now tonight, hey, I got stuff to do. So then you would just, you know, he's going to be late anyway. So I'm just gonna finish up what I'm doing, and then you show up late, and they're all sitting there waiting for you. And then the next night that would be Matt, you know, and I'm sure he thought the same thing. Like, well, Philip's gonna be late, or Jason's gonna be late, and then so he would, you know, get caught up in what he's doing and show up late, and then it's the three of us, Joe, Philip, and Jason, you know, sitting there waiting on Matt. So it was, schedule-wise, it was a mess.
But it got to the point where the demands on his time, you know, he started putting time limits on practice, and that really put a strain on a lot of things. It was, I forget the time, but it was like by X time, probably 9 o'clock or something, we got to quit. And when you're young and it's rock and roll, I mean, it was just like we were all kind of mad about that, really mad. And, you know, it got to the point where that time would, and Jason made things worse because he was so erratic. I mean, he would just show up at all times. He was always late, showing up late, so it would cut into our time, but it didn't matter. By the time Joe set the timer on when he had to leave, it didn't matter if Jason was late. And along came the old, you know, he'd stand up, unplug that guitar cable, and it was just, we were fuming. And he left, so he would up and leave. And then, we'd of course get in a fight. We were all brothers, still are. You know, Joe, he's always felt that way about us, and us about him, obviously. He's like a brother. Philip, of course, is my brother. But, you know, so we'd fight about stuff like that, like brothers do. And so that led to a lot of tension. So, you know, beer drinking, girlfriends and time limits, and I gotta go. That was really putting a strain on things.
And then with Joe's relationship and stuff, he started putting a deadline on things by whatever, I don't remember the exact times and things like that, but at some point, all right, I gotta go, and he knew then he had to drive back to Burke, and then he'd go try to see her, then she'd go to bed, and he'd have, you know, he was on this schedule now, and Jason would goof off, all of us, but especially Jason. He'd be drinking beer, and he'd be cutting up and goofing around and stuff, and then it would come to that time, and then Joe unplugs, and that became a thing, this dreaded thing. It hit a certain time, Joe kind of checks his watch, unplugs, amps off, and you're like, oh, now we're toast. You know, we had a couple things we were going to work on, and now he's gone, and, you know, we should have adjusted accordingly, but instead we just started getting worried and resentful and things like that. Negativity set in, conflict and negativity, instead of trying to go you know what? Let's wake up here. Let's quit goofing around. Let's get started earlier. Let's get our stuff done. And then when he pulls the plug, it's not going to be so negative.
So, he's working at Tarpley's and teaching guitar, so his co-workers, the whole garage band, you don't play for money yet, you need to put, give that up, get a real band. But the girlfriend too, she was putting some serious demands on his time. I had a serious girlfriend in high school at the time. About this point though, we broke up, and there were a lot of other reasons, and she was kind of the type, she didn't help her case at all when I broke it off with her. She didn't care for the band. She didn't, she didn't say it, but it's like, you gotta spend all your time with me. So she didn't like anything that detracted from that. She did not like me going to jam or the whole band, any of it. And so, like I said, there's a lot of other factors too, but that was one of them. I was like, this is something I love, and this is something I want to do. If you don't like it, bye. And so I'd kind of cleared the decks, so to speak. And so, you kind of expected the same from everybody. And it's like, okay, you've got this serious girlfriend. She's needy, demanding time. And I kind of felt like, look, I mean, I had a great girlfriend. We were in love. Everything was great. But it's like, look, I got rid of mine. I didn't say it, but it's, you kind of expect the same thing. Look, this is what we want to do.
All the bickering and the fighting and just the lack of direction that we had, really needing a manager or somebody to step in that could tell us to go this direction and what to do, and us not knowing what to do, being so young and immature in the business and musically. I think that really hurt us, and work schedules, just common everyday life. Jason had this schedule that was pretty hard to work around, and a lot of times I would work in the afternoon and or maybe work during the day, and it was kind of all over the map. Made it difficult to get together and practice and function, and it certainly didn't help with all the other chaos surrounding the group. With people coming around, and it was great that we had a following, but sometimes it was hard to get separation because people wanted to be around us and listen to us and kind of hang out. And anyway, I think all those things were really a big burden at the end of the day that kind of caused us to dismantle. But I think the biggest problem was the lack of direction and not having somebody that was experienced and that could come in and step in and say, this is what you should do.
Among the girls, after I broke up with my girlfriend, there was some girls of interest, and one of them, she's my wife now, so Bobby was one of the ones that she worked briefly where we worked, so she was kind of there at the time this was going on. She came over a few times, so she came over to our second practice pad and watched us jam a few times, and I liked her, and this was years before we would get together, probably 3 or 4 years at least. But so I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in this girl, and so she's coming over with her friend Nicole, and so there was a couple of times they came over to see us, and I think that's interesting to the band history. We never hooked up or anything like that. I invited her to the buyer's party, and maybe through the grapevine or something, but so she didn't go. But and then of course the ill-fated trip with the boyfriends to watch Revolver out at Lake Arrowhead. So she's in the story, and that's kind of neat. But
and people would come over, and Cam Ainsworth was one of those. Jason started working out at the prison, and he met John Belcher and Cam Ainsworth. They were prison guards, and Jason would be out there. He had long shifts, 12-hour shifts and stuff, and he would talk about, I'm in a band, I'm a drummer, and they're like, oh, no, you're not. You don't know how to do anything. Nah, dude, we're great. we're really good. You got to come out and listen. And so finally Cam did. And Cam came out and listened, and we're jamming.
So he only meets the three of us. We're jamming as a three-piece.
And he's like, oh, man, you guys are good.
You guys are awesome.
And then one particular deal, we were doing Sunshine of Your Love and jamming. I could play, the leads on that. I'm, no. I could handle that. Sorry, Clapton. But I could handle that in three-piece, and we were just rocking out on that, and he hears us and you guys are good, three guys, and we're like, you like this, you should see the four, you should see Joe.
Well, it's only three of us, we got four, or we used to have four, Ooh, what are you talking about, Joe? And who's this Joe guy, and play the songs, listen to that guy, that lead tearing it up, that's Joe, he's awesome.
And then we'd play him some songs, and he'd hear Joe tearing it up. Oh man, who's this guy? Man, he's killing it. That's Joe. Where's Joe? He's not around. Oh man, this Joe guy. Man, where's Joe? You gotta get Joe in here. Man. And then a few other guys, they brought like this guy they called Six Toes. Is this Mexican prison guard, and they brought him out there, and we jammed a little bit, and he was kind of impressed, and we played the stuff with Joe on it. Oh yeah, and then so it was like, Joe, oh, listen to Joe, but where's Joe? There's no Joe.
Yeah, right, y'all, you don't have, it's just you guys, that's okay, you're, imaginary Joe. That became the running joke, so it was funny, and we even, I think, tossed around the idea of calling ourselves Imaginary Joe.
Then we started saying Imaginary Joe, and we should call the band Imaginary Joe because they think he's a figment of our imagination. They'd never met him, never saw him, and so that's where that came from. Eventually, we just and then in a sense there was a bit of paying tribute,
because it was like it wasn't really Revolver anymore. He left. It's just the three of us. We might add John or whatever, but it's Imaginary Joe was sort of, and because that's what we sort of called ourselves jokingly, because it's like we're Revolver, but Revolver's the four of us with Joe. Well, if you're coming to see us tonight and it's just the three of us because Joe's gone and he's probably quitting, it's Imaginary Joe. That's how we felt. That's who we were without him.
Yeah, you guys rock. I can't believe Jason is this good on the drums, dude. I thought he sucked. Man, I came out here and I thought you guys were gonna suck. But you guys are really good. I'm impressed. And it's just the three of us. There's no Joe. He was gone.
There wasn't any one thing that caused me to quit the band. I think it was a whole laundry list of things. I kind of felt like maybe we were kind of going in different directions a little bit at the time. I had a girlfriend that really didn't want me playing music, period, and she certainly didn't want me playing around all these other girls and people that were coming around, because we had such a big following that would come and watch us practice and jam and hang out. I think all those things probably were a big problem, and a girl's mind that seeing that I was probably going to eventually be playing bars, nightclubs, and having lots of access to lots of things that could cause problems in relationships.
His name's in the title, but it was like we sort of, we're not really Revolver anymore. We're kind of Imaginary Joe because these guys keep hearing about Joe and they never see Joe, and so that became the album, Imaginary Joe.
I think he left the group midway through the recording process.
But towards the end of the CD, we had about 2 songs left. Basically about 2 songs left, and Joe finally just left, quit. And so, and we had hoped, that he would change his mind and come back. And
It's kind of fuzzy to try to remember why I didn't just stick around long enough to at least finish what we were doing.
we kept it going. It was just the three of us trying to finish out this CD and try to figure out where to go from there.
That's when Philip really started taking over the lead roles and actually led into playing lead in different groups, you know, past Revolver.
Anyway, it was never a dig or a stab, and I feel like probably through the years he's felt that way the whole time. That's always really bothered me, just kind of suspecting that's what he thought. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with the split. I mean, it was tough. It was emotional. It really hurt us. Not only our best friend, it was a difficult split.
Then this little joke started where they're like, you guys are making that up. There's no Joe. Like, I don't know who did that, but I've never, and Cam would kind of joke and be like, I mean, every time I come out here, there's no Joe. I mean, these guys say that they're Joe. I don't think he even exists. And,
So, one time I vaguely remember sitting around after he quit, we're all sitting at the practice pad, and we're like, well, if we really do call it that, it's funny, and we all got it, and it was just like, what if he finds out, though, and he what if it's upsetting? What if he thinks it's a diss? And Jason, well, he quit. Who cares what he thinks? And we might have been, we're hurting. Yeah, that's right. Doesn't matter what he thinks because he quit. That wasn't what we intended. Well, anyway, Fats was there, and he runs off to Tarpley's, and he tells Joe. I seem to recall that. So immediately, Joe, I'm sure he's probably felt that was the case all these years. And I mean, it just wasn't. It was, like I said, it was a joke, and then it was just kind of fitting for what was going on at the time, but it was never meant as anything nasty to Joe. But here you go, Fats. He's has a propensity to distort the truth, but also big mouth. That's something that when guys are in private and they're upset, they're just kind of blowing off some steam, that that's not something you should run off and tell the other guy. That's pretty sorry that he did that, but I think that's probably led to that drama.
but we gave him a CD and said, here it is, and there it is, the title, Imaginary Joe. I don't think he was too thrilled with that title, but but there it was.
I do remember Jason and maybe Matt coming to Tarpley Music after they completed it, and I'd never seen the pictures or the sleeve, the CD sleeve with all the information on it, and I really was out of all that and missed it and didn't have input on it and didn't even know they were doing it. And I remember them coming to Tarpley's and when I was working one day and dropping it off, and it was kind of like, hey, here's your CD, look at what you missed.
So at the end of the band house days and the second CD, before we finished the second CD, Joe had started to fade away, then he ultimately quit. It was devastating. We could kind of see it coming before it officially happened. It took up a lot of our time and energy, like how to get him back into the band, get him back interested. Maybe we can, get our act together and quit drinking and partying as much, and we can get serious and show him we're serious. All sorts of things. Probably not anything very bright, but we just tried constantly to think of something to kind of get him back in the game. Didn't work. It's interesting because I think that one of the things that led to Joe quitting, there were various factors, but one of the things that led him to quit was the fighting, I think. And it's kind of sad because being young and you know, two brothers and Jason, and I mean, Joe's he was really affected by that. He's doesn't like fighting, and he's not a confrontational guy, and I think he's sensitive to that, and that really did a lot of damage. And of course, being young, you don't really think too much about that. So Philip and I mean, we're twins, we fight all the time. Maybe not all that bad, maybe sometimes bad, but it's Norrance. You just fight. You fight to do it. That's how brothers are. Joe was an only child. Jason, he's a dramatic guy, and he, to a degree, enjoys fighting. So he would, you know, we'd all kind of spar, and sometimes Jason would spar with you intentionally just to be the way he was, just to get a rise out of you, and he got a kick out of it. So sometimes that was intentional on his part, or he would just, if it were me and Philip, he'd sit back like a shyster and just laugh and eat it up. So the fighting was really normal, and like I said, Philip and I would just go at each other's throats, and it was just, I mean, you'd almost just, you hit each other and then you're done, you get it over with, and we'd move on. Jason, like I said, same way. So the three of us really weren't affected as much by that. It was just, you know, bands fight. We knew this, and it's like brothers fight, bands fight. Joe, I think that had a way bigger negative impact on him, and it really, looking back on it years later, it just, you see it differently when you're older, and you're like, yeah, that I think that really had a much bigger impact than we knew even at the time. So a lot of factors, but that's one of them. I mean, the fighting, and you know, he's the one that quit, so I think it really played a big part.
And then the fact too that we all were really fighting a lot. I felt like everybody in the band is like brothers to me, but we were sure fighting and bickering about every little thing, and disagreements were pretty high with a bunch of teenagers, and which is understandably something that you come across at that age, and possibly too the kind of the party scene. I wasn't really into that as much, and wasn't a drinker. I'm not saying that I was a saint, or not saying that later on, you know, I didn't have my fair share of things, but at the time, I was really trying to stay away from all that, and I really think those things factored in a lot with my decision to leave the group.
Joe quitting was detrimental to us. I mean, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know if he was coming back, if he was, what was going on. He just basically slowly stopped showing up, stopped having interest. We dealt with it the best way we could deal with it, and it basically was the end of Revolver, the beginning to the end of Revolver itself. He actually quit halfway through making the album, if I remember right. It was a shocker. I mean, he had his talent, and when somebody like that leaves a group, you usually don't recover, and we didn't. We were upset, driving around, we were driving countless hours, upset, saying stuff like, he was our brother, how could he do this to us, stuff like that. It was just one of those things that that we just never really could get over.
Joe and I were best friends as teenagers, school, but yet we were young enough and raw enough that you didn't know how do we still be friends? You know, he quit the band and he severed our musical relationship and how, okay, but he wanted to be friends and I wanted to be friends, but we didn't quite know how to do it. Joe was teaching guitar at a couple of the music stores, Great Neck and Tarpley's. First Great Neck and then Tarpley's. And he's moonlighting, and we would go visit him sometimes at the music store, make that a good excuse. I mean, I need to buy some strings. Hey, Joe. But really the worst ones at that were Jason and John, because those guys were more shameless in those areas. Me and Matt were more, okay, don't make a fool of yourself, but they would go in all the time. Jason would go in to get a pick, buy a 5-cent pick. Hey, Joe, dude, Joe, come talk, come listen, and like try to be really obvious about.
I think one of my biggest regrets was actually leaving Revolver.
Where he was at in his life at that point. I think it was, he was doing the Catfish gigs and all that. You remember how he played the Catfish places, and I think it had a lot to do with the girl he was dating at the time that wanted most of his attention. He felt like he was more professional, wanted a more structured approach, quit jank sales and started learning from Mike McAdoo. Mike McAdoo started telling me, hey, you're good enough, I'm going to show you how to write music out on paper and start recording it. I mean, that's what I think. And I've talked to him, I said, I never really got a really good answer, but that's what I think. What do you think?
It was several factors, and the big one's probably the girlfriend. He had a clingy, demanding girlfriend that didn't like the band, didn't like him being around girls at the band house. Plus, she was just selfish and wanted him to be at home or be ready to see her at the drop of a hat. And then also, there were so many shenanigans going on. There was fights, and there was drama, and there was drinking, and there was wasted time, and there was just a bunch of tomfoolery going on that really took its toll on Joe. And in addition to that, he was taking lessons from Mike McAdoo. And Mike McAdoo was a consummate professional, lead guitarist of the year in Branson, Missouri, and played with the Osmonds and all that kind of stuff. And he was a sort of a middle-aged guy, roughly 20 years older than us. And so Joe started to look up to him, and he was a phenomenal guitar player, and Joe was learning all this great stuff from Mike McAdoo. And then he got in with the music scene with these other guitar teachers and guitar people that worked at the music stores and stuff. Now, those guys, at least in Wichita Falls 20 plus years ago, the guys that worked at those music stores were really talented. They weren't just schmucks that came along and are, doing some piddly little job. It's like these guys were great guitar players, great piano players, musicians, whatever. And they, that's kind of what their day job was selling instruments and things. And so Joe got in with that crowd, and I'm sure it was sort of like, you play in a little band that, so what places do you play? We weren't playing anywhere. And, we were pretty rowdy. We were a rowdy, rough, ragtag kind of outfit, and he started getting a little too fancy for that. So
at the time, I had a little bit different direction musically too, on the guitar, and I think all those things kind of contributed. And I was kind of upset that I quit when I did, because our CD that we had done, our album that we were recording, there was some stuff on it that was really unfinished that I was not a part of, even down to the pictures and things to do with the production of it and layout of the cover, and there was some things I didn't really have a whole lot of say-so in. I kind of felt like too musically, Matt and Philip were getting a lot better at their instruments and their craft and their songwriting, and I felt like at the time, since they were still writing a lot of the music, that I didn't have as much input in the music, and they were able to kind of hear what they wanted the song to say, which is understandably because it was their songs. And I'd always kind of had free reign to play whatever, and I don't know, I felt like some of the stuff I was playing maybe wasn't what they were hearing at times, and you just start running into a lot of things, and then any chance of any songs I could come up with or write, I didn't feel like they would really be recognized if I did present them. And Jason could have felt that way too, I don't know. But I just felt like it was kind of a dead-end street for me at the time, and that was unfortunate.
We had that Dearborn heater that sort of, we suspected had a gas leak, because when it got cold in the wintertime, that particular winter, and you crank it up, and some of us had started sleeping on the couch there, and recording late at night, crashing on the couch, we're paying rent, why not? You get really sleepy. If you had that Dearborn heater up, you just tend to get really sleepy and kind of knock out.
I want to say it was a practice, more like hanging out, but our guitars and drums and stuff would just talk to each other. Because it wasn't really like, it was like all of us hanging out.
The best stuff was band house footage from the band house after the tax office. In the band house, we're jamming like crazy, and Brad or somebody's doing all these great shots and taking priceless footage of these jam sessions, and we had shaggy hair and everything. Even more than that, I remember there was some tax office footage, and Jason talks about it. He went on to tape over stuff and lose stuff and have stuff, surviving stuff lost, damaged, destroyed. He just completely dropped the ball on all that great footage from the good old days. But there was some footage of us in the tax office, and I saw it 2 or 3 years later, and I remember, I had shaggy hair. It was curly and shaggy down over my, to my eyes and everything, and I was like, oh man, look at my hair. And that was in the tax office. But the pictures of us outside Grandma's house across the street from the tax office were still kind of clean cut, and the pool party clean, because that's when we first got together. But that would have been about sometime around the pool party, would have been whenever we all got haircuts around the time of the pool party, would have been about the last haircuts we got for about 6 months or so. And Jason and his hair it's even curlier than mine, and he just let it grow out. It just turned into this big fro, and it would curl out from under his hat. And he even grew these long all of us did. I grew sideburns, and then so did Jason. He had these big red sideburns, and so yeah, it's too bad none of that stuff survives. But there was footage of us in the tax office. There was footage of us in the sound loft. There was footage of us out at Lake Arrowhead, and there was video at the band house, and there was video when we set up and did the roadside show on Midwestern Parkway. What else? There was footage of us somewhere else, but that's at least 5 different places. I want to say there was a 6th, and Jason managed to lose all of it.
I remember the whole Shady Lake trip was a trip to try to get Joe to relive or try to get back with the group, because I think at that point he was already pretty much gone. We all knew it, but it wasn't official. Remember that? Like, the Shady Lake trip was a trip that was last minute. We tried to get Joe to go on it. I think Joe actually probably would have went if he was to go back in time. But Shady Lake, Arkansas, the only time I ever been there was to get Joe to come with us. And at the time, we were just like, we tried and tried and tried. It was up to last minute. We had everything loaded up in the cars.
No.
And we just said, screw it, we're going anyway. No.
So the band house days and the second CD, that was a really miserable time for me because I was a fish out of water. I quit my job, moved out of my apartment, kind of moved back in with my parents in Cleburne to start school, couple hours away.
We left the dog patch, Fat Man Patterson's house. We had kind of been crashing there for a while, 30 days, so about a month or so, and he kind of got wind. It's like, I think they're living here in this house. I'll charge them more rent. Yeah. And it was like $50. So the initial rent was $150 a month, and that was great. I mean, it was really good for us. Great for the fact that you're splitting it 4 ways, but it's a house. I mean, you got a house there for your practice pad, but being young and full of pride, and he comes around one day and he's like, I'm raising the rent $50 a month,
and a fish out of water going back and forth. I'd go to Cleburne and spend 2 or 3 days there eating hot, fresh meals and going to classes. And as soon as class was out, you'd have another, 3 or 4 days off easy. Typically over the weekend, drive back to Wichita Falls, sleep in the band house, and then fend for yourself on meals, go get fast food and things like that. Sleep on that couch with the Dearborn heater, and just a dump of a house. The insulation, the plumbing, the electric, everything was terrible. And to sort of live out of that house for 3 days, 4 days out of the week while you're working on this CD. You're mixing and producing, and you're overdubbing, and you're doing all this work, and then you got to leave, pack up, leave, go back, do the college, all that. It was just a miserable time, running out of money and patience. And
$200 a month, how dare you? We'll show him we're out of here. So we see ya, over $50 monthly. And, looking back, that was kind of a dumb thing, I think, because, it was just a good place. And then, so we packed up and moved out. We showed him, I think he moved in after we moved out. He was eyeing that house. He thought, that, that dump was a palace. Him and the Warthound moved back into it.
We should have just kept the practice pad on 31st Street. I mean, what did they want? Another $50?
Something like that.
We should have rented the whole thing out. So, because he kept nosing in there, we got tired of him coming in that back room, and we were afraid he was going to come in there and start messing with our equipment.
Yeah, or steal it.
And he was getting really shady, and it was just time to leave. And I think we got out pretty quick in one night. That was one night, wasn't it? We moved everything out of there.
I don't remember.
It's gone now. Wouldn't that be cool if it was still up? Wouldn't that be cool if it was still up? We could walk through there and check it out.
Yeah. Matt always talks about the band house and the second CD as his favorite time period. Well, for me, it's quite the opposite. The tax office and the first CD was much happier time for me.
But, so anyway, we go to Indiana Street, and I'm sure it was a lot more. I mean, there was a little bit of a gap, if I remember right, between when we packed up and showed Fat Man and then realized we had to find a pad. So we get downtown practice pad, and it's $300 a month, if I remember right. So we left over having to pay $200, and here we are as kids.
The later period of the band, when Joe started kind of fading out and John Belcher was around, I remember I was dating a couple of girls, and he was married, and then he decided to kind of, set that aside and try going back to being single. I think he really saw us and thought, oh, yeah, I can do this too. I want to be a rock star. I want to get chicks. And I remember him finding me one day just kind of by myself. I think he might have been at work, and I was at Sutherland's, and I think he came up to Sutherland's by himself to talk to me. I was like, well, we're not friends, we're acquaintances, and you're friends with Jason. And I hardly knew the guy, He had purple dyed in his hair, like a purple patch. And by then Jason was working out of the prison, and that's where he met John Belcher. They were prison guards out at the All Red unit, correctional officers. And, but anyway, John sort of had this, I don't know if envious is the word, but he had this, he saw what we were doing and he kind of wanted a piece of the action. But he comes to my work and talks to me, and I'm just sort of like, okay. I mean, it wasn't totally weird, but it was a little bit off. And then he wants me to pick, you can take one and I can take one. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, go get a girl,
So Dad shows up to the practice pad. The night before, Jason Riley had been on a bender, and I mean, the place was just littered with beer cans and beer trash, and it was incredible. There was probably at least more than a case worth of debris there, just laying in the floor and scattered all about. And it's you look back on it as kids, like, for one, why do we even have a scenario where Dad's showing up to the jam pad? That's just hilariously stupid. And then next, like, nobody could muster, the presence of mind or anything to clean up. And yeah, I mean, it would have chapped us royally to have to pick up after him, but still, I mean, looking back on it, it's like, man. And, you're also kind of thinking, like, well, I didn't do it, so I didn't do anything wrong. But then he comes in, he's mad. You can see steam coming, and he's looking around. What happened here? Did you guys get drunk? What's then? Where, that's Jason. And he's like, you mean to tell me one guy drank all this? And we're like, yeah. Yeah, he sure did. And it's hilarious. Like, yeah, that was nothing for him to do, but you, as a parent, he walks in and sees all that. It's like, there's no way. Yeah, you're telling me. But it was all Jason. But by that point, that was really where I cracked my first beer, was there at the practice pad. I mean, it wasn't that night that he showed up, but, it was like, it really was a one-man gang, whoever he had with him. But anyway, yeah, I first tried beer, and, that probably didn't help anything with Joe. We didn't drink. We were good, clean-cut kids, and all three of us, and so, him seeing me, like, yeah, this is, I kind of like this, that I'm sure had a huge part in him eventually quitting. But I like beer, so I'll never get nominated to the Supreme Court admitting that, drinking a beer at 20, right? I still like beer. And the other one was so there was this poster on the wall, and it's funny, it was a pin-up swimsuit model. I still remember it was like a SI. It was a swimsuit issue, Cindy Margolis, and that was hung up like in the hall. I mean, it was pretty hot, a little racy, but nothing. Anyway, so that on the infamous visit, Dad's, oh, there's beer everywhere, and then he sees that, and he's like, naked women on the walls. Ooh. I just kind of laughed at that one too. I was like, she's not naked. It's just ridiculous. But just cracks me up looking back on it. Your dad should never show up to your jam pad. I mean, unless he's cool. And Dad was not cool.
So, Revolver lost Joe. It was a painful time.
we were all kind of shocked and surprised and upset. And we tried everything we could to kind of get him back, and it didn't work, of course. He had his girlfriend and his lessons. He started teaching lessons at 2 different places and meeting professional musicians and guys that may have looked down on what we were doing, because these guys played for money, and some of these guys played at the country club, and more highfalutin kind of deals, and that was probably all mixed together. But maybe more than anything was the tomfoolery that was going on, and there was a lot of shenanigans. There was a lot of wasted time, and all of that stuff in place of actually playing music and getting down to business. So he had enough, and it started with him kind of not showing up for recording, and then he just left altogether. And so that's when John Belcher came onto the scene.
John added a different element and a magical element for a short period of time. It was a short period where he did Angela and stuff like that, but it was like...
Who taught John how to play guitar?
Me and you.
And how quick did he pick it up?
Pretty damn quick.
I've never seen anyone.
I never did either. Me and Matt were going out to Graham Central Station, and you and John would sit there and have guitar sessions for like hours on that second floor deal.
He had been hanging around with Jason, and he'd been picking up guitar, and Jason taught him some chords, and I taught him some chords. I think Matt taught him a few chords and things. So he was picking up everything from everywhere, and he learned quick. I mean, to this day, I've never seen anyone pick up guitar as quick as he did. And he could sing, and had a good voice, and he also had a writing knack too. So he sort of stepped in at the right time to fill that vacuum that Joe left. And there we are, 3 of us, so why not take on another guy? And of course, it's sort of like if you go through a breakup or a divorce and then you find a good nice girlfriend afterwards, you're happy and you're satisfied, but you're not 100%, your heart's not 100% into it. I think that's kind of how we all were with the John Belcher situation. He was sort of it wasn't the original Revolver, and it's not what we all really wanted deep down inside, but it was a good alternate lineup. And so it worked for a little while. But before all this happened, Joe was still around, and before John was officially in the band, they had written Standing Outside, as we think of it. They titled it Lost in a Memory. And it was John and Jason's little creation, and it really got better and better, and we worked on it. Harmonies, Joe put a really nice set of leads to it, and they were really pleased, really happy with it. And it was really the best thing on that second CD that didn't have anything to do with Philip or Matt, sort of a different kind of more country-ish song. It was the best offering of its kind. And so all that was sort of going on, and John kind of got in the band.
And then, after Joe quit, we got a guy named John. He started learning how to play guitar. Got a group going, and then I think towards the end he quit and just walked away from it. Over on the house on Holiday Street, we taught him how to play, and he learned and picked up really well, and then we did a bunch of his original music. And so it was good. It wasn't the same, but we knew we were going in the right direction, because then you could play lead to where it filled the void, and then we thought
who could play lead?
he could play lead. Philip could play leads.
So how quick did John learn?
He learned pretty fast. I mean, he was really fast. He learned. He had to learn really quickly, but he picked it up like within a couple of months.
And we bounced around practice pads. We sort of used their place out at Lake Arrowhead away from the water. Cam Ainsworth, John Belcher, Jason Riley were all living in this place, like a double wide off the lake. And Matt was around there a lot, and we tried to use that as a practice pad. Didn't have a whole lot of success.
So basically, the end of Revolver. Whenever I knew Revolver was over, was we actually moved from that second story place where I was telling y'all about, where John first learned how to play guitar, and we actually moved out in the country. We actually moved these people out of their house so we could.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. So anyway, we're driving, and that's when we get into this Gary Allen, and that's back when Gary Allen was huge. I'm sitting there driving, and I just have this like sad feeling, and I'm like looking at green fields, and the song "Green Fields" with the Gary Allen
turned
pops
me on
up.
to that song to this day.
Green fields backed by blue skies. Yeah.
About as blue as
your true blue eyes. And I wonder. But anyway. Do you feel the way I feel? Yeah, it's a great song.
When you see
so we had this practice pad, and we actually worked for probably, I want to say it was in the early spring, worked up a couple songs, and then the summer months hit, and y'all actually went and built playgrounds for the rest of the summer. And that was the end of Revolver as we know it. It started off with Joe probably 8 months prior, and then it ended out there at Lake Arrowhead Ranch Estates.
So in the early days before Revolver, when it was the three of us, me, Philip, Joe, when we were getting together, I had picked up bass and taught myself entirely by ear. I also picked up guitar a little bit after that. I picked up bass to where I could play with the two of them. And so it was afterwards, but not too long after, probably after we got a drummer, got the tax office, I started to mess around a little bit with guitar. That probably started with the guitar I got for Christmas. I think it was a Fender Squire. It's a Fender Stratocaster Squire, white, so a white Fender, and I'd go on to call it white trash. That's what people know it by, but use that on some recordings too. It was a strange thing though, Philip and I talked about it recently. It was just kind of like, it was odd that they got me that gift. It was great, I mean, but he was the guitar player and I was the, picking up bass, and I think had that bass from the flea market. Anyway, and he had an electric guitar by then. It wasn't very good, fine for a beginner, but it was a Harmony, so it was a Stratocaster style, but it was made by Harmony, and then they get me the Fender Squire, which is better, because it seemed unusual. But because of that, I started to kind of fiddle around with guitar, and didn't have a teacher. Nobody was teaching me or anything, so I had to learn on my own. But the way that I learned was watching Philip and Joe. They're both playing guitar, so you just notice what they're doing while you're jamming, and when you're not jamming, in between or before or after practice, things like that. And Jason would pick up guitar from time to time. So just hanging out at the band house, we're all doing that sort of thing, and so just watching what they're doing and just picking it up, imitation really. And I figured out bar chords by watching their fingers, and so I just watched what they were doing and picked it up myself. I remember Joe showing me a suspended bar chord finger pattern once he saw that I had picked up the bar chord majors and minors And so he showed me that, and then of course I'd use the suspended progression when I wrote Make Believe Summer's Gone. So, but I remember picking that up on the side, teaching myself, and picking it up. It didn't advance to any kind of high level or become great at it, but good enough to play it and to write songs on it and play on some of my recordings. But for that purpose, I picked it up really pretty quick. Really even quicker than John Belcher. That gets talked about a lot. He was hanging around the practice pad, and we all basically kind of taught him how to play. I showed him a few things on guitar. Philip probably the most. He'd hang out after practices and he'd want, hey, show me this, show me that, how do you do this? And Jason, of course, taught him too. So he had people that was helping him teach him. It was he caught on. Philip always talks about he's probably the fastest person that he's come across to pick up guitar the way that he did, as quick as he did. But I taught myself and picked up what I know and can do on guitar just as quick, or probably quicker. It was just nobody really seemed to pay any attention. It was just something I was doing on the side. But with John, it was he was vocal about wanting to learn, and he was getting people to show him. So, but it all had to be quick. Whatever I was going to pick up and do on guitar and bass too. I mean, you got to jump in. You can't lag behind. You got to run with the pack, or they leave you. So, what I taught myself and picked up, I had to do it quick, and so we kind of took off, and then things happened really quick. And that day and time, as soon as we got Jason as the drummer, the next thing you know, we were going to the Sound Loft to record an album, and on from there.
When we kind of left the band house and we were sort of fish out of water and we're looking for a place, those guys moved into that double wide close to the lake, not waterfront, but out at the lake area, lake neighborhood, so to speak, lake property. And they were living together. John split with his wife and Teresa, and incidentally she was like a cousin of Jason's. He didn't really know her, but found out she was a Riley. And anyway, he split with Teresa, and then John and Jason and Cam Ainsworth, he was another correctional officer, and they all knew each other that way, and they were all hanging out, same shifts, night shift, and lots of days off, like 3 or 4 days off in a row. Might have been 4 on, 4 off. So they have basically 4 days, and they're on together, then they run around together. And so those guys were living together. And Cam was an interesting character. And, he sort of talked like this, smoking his cigarettes, talk like this. My name's Cam. What's your name? You want to go drink some beer? Yeah, man, let's go party. I'm not sure there's really a Joe. I've never met Joe. Nicole. Yeah, I'm in love with Nicole. He was dating Nicole. And Nicole was basically best friends with Bobby, who would go on to marry my brother. And but back then, before Matt and Bobby were together, Cam and Nicole, Bobby's best friend Nicole, was in a serious relationship with Cam. And this is all towards the very end of the Revolver days, and Joe was gone and all that. But Cam, I think the final straw with Nicole was when it got back to her and I was there, I saw him bragging about this, that, oh yeah, he really liked Nicole, he liked having her, but he liked thinking about playing the field, or maybe trying to play the field. But yeah, I'm gonna break up with Nicole as soon as she buys me a PlayStation for Christmas. Yeah, and then I'm gonna dump her. But I'm gonna stay with her till she buys me a PlayStation. And, like to say that a lot for whatever reason. And then finally got back around to Nicole, and she dropped him. I don't think she ever looked back. But and he beating his head against the wall, drunk. Nicole. I don't know if any of this was worth keeping, but it's fun to talk about. There's a lot of nights in the latter days post Joe where it wasn't the true Revolver, but it was the remnants of Revolver, that we had these practices, and then the guys were itching to go out. And Cam and John, they were new, faces in the mix, and quite a bit different dynamic with Jason than his sidekicks. These guys weren't sidekicks. John Belcher was, they were getting close. They were developing a close friendship and music and work and all that, but John was not a sidekick. I mean, in some ways it might have seemed that way, but really he was more of his own guy than these guys that hung out with Jason. They were sidekicks. John, not so much. Cam, definitely not. But John and Cam, they wanted to go party, 4 days off. It was a rough job, 4 days of 12-hour shifts in a place like that, all red, and guys wanted to get out and cut loose. And so there was a lot of partying and getting way away from practicing. Now John started coming around while Joe was still in the
John
band.
came around at the Byers gig.
Yep.
The Magical Byers gig.
And you met him through the prison.
Yeah, and he was married to my cousin.
And so he was around while Joe was still
so
there.
like he came over, and I remember he got so drunk he puked over by my drum kit and all that. And
then another odd one was I talked about Lake Arrowhead, the practice pad out there. That was strange because it was just a weird time because Joe had left, and then John Belcher was part of the group, so it was strange because it was a new group of guys, and well, of course it wouldn't turn out to be the same.
Out at that little double wide, we'd practice for about an hour or two at the most, and then guys wanted to wrap it up, especially John, Jason, Cam, and Matt would kind of go along with them. And I didn't do near as much of that. I just wasn't into that. I wanted to get work done, and that was sort of how I always was. I guess I was the more serious out of the bunch. I wanted to get stuff done. I wanted to practice. I wanted to get songs knocked out, lined out, flesh out a list, work on stuff. And these guys were getting much more into practice a little bit and then let's go out. I remember there's this guy, James, I can't remember his last name, but this James guy that we had played baseball with as teenagers, like 15, 16 years old, and he somehow, they knew him, and maybe he had started working out there at the prison or something, but he showed up to the double wide and watched us jam and thought it was great. We didn't even have Joe. Imagine what he would have thought, but by then, obviously the new guitar player, John Belcher's the rhythm guitar. He took over for me as the rhythm guitar player. So then I had to become the lead guitar player. I had to replace Joe. And talk about a tough job to fill. So we're still a four-piece, John, myself on guitar, and then obviously we still have Matt on bass and Jason on drums. But that Jason kid, not Jason, James, came out. He was digging us and what we were doing. And there was always lots of girls that came out, and various members, would get involved. Various guys would hook up with various girls, and Jason, he dated a couple of Amandas. And of course they liked the song.
we'd practiced for a brief time out at Lake Arrowhead. John Belcher had kind of become part of the group, so after Joe left, John was stepped in, and Philip kind of became the lead guitar player, still lead vocals, but John was kind of getting, he was close to a role as like a co-lead vocalist at that point. But so anyway, they rented a place, like a double wide or something. The two of them were living, they worked together and they lived out there, and it was big, spacious, 3 bedrooms at least. But we were jamming out there for a while. Then from there we moved to the Indiana Street, downtown Wichita Falls, rented facility. And I think we got the practice pad in Indiana Street, downtown Wichita Falls. So anyway, that was cool. And now, like I said, it's kind of silly that we got rid of the house for a higher rent, but that was like a storefront type deal. It was long, and so it had a ton of space. The house did too, but it was more sectioned off because it was like, living room, weird middle kitchen, back, or so, as far as just uninterrupted space, that was better. That didn't last too long though, it seems, and just a few things I remember from that. I remember recording some demos. So anyway, we were there downtown on Indiana Street. We got ourselves a new pad. Those were sort of darker days, gloomy days. And then we got the downtown practice pad. Had to pay rent. It was down there in downtown Wichita Falls. Dave's Drum World, which became Tracy Music, and Cool Beans Chris and those guys. Cool Beans Chris, as we called him later, he he rented out the pad to us. So really kind of the final chapter of the official part of Revolver being a group would be the Indiana Street practice pad, the third and final practice pad that we had. So Cool Beans Chris rented out, he was the manager at Tracy Music, and he rented out practice pads to local bands. And we got this one that was down on street level, nice, good spacious deal like we'd needed for so long. We got a little fridge in there, stocked up with drinks and snacks, and so we jammed in there with the new lineup. I remember the night that I had recorded it, I was the only one there, and I just showed up, to do some recording by myself. And there's a bum or a hobo out there. Hey man, can I have $1? No. It's just like, I don't think I was rude per se, but it's just like, no, man, I'm thinking I'm not giving you any money. Plus, that's kind of dangerous. If you open up your wallet, you could get mugs. I was just kind of irritated. And it's like, man, I'm trying to go into my practice pad and I get hit up for $1. So guy shuffles off. I don't think anything about it. I spend a few hours in there recording some other stuff. When I was talking about it, I remember specifically that one I was recording, Enemy Inside, So I'm done after a few hours, and I come out to leave. Windshield smashed. Smashed out the windshield. Didn't even steal anything. I had my college backpack in there and textbooks. Didn't steal anything, just smashed my windshield. Ever since then, somebody wants to bum $1, I always give them $1. And it was around that time that we got that Texas Nightlife gig where we played like a little set or half a set. And of course, for pro bono as usual. But it was a good little experience. We got up there. Sean Splon was playing drums. That's right, Jason couldn't make it because Jason had to work that night or something. And so it was just John and me and Matt, and Sean Splon was on the drums, and it didn't go so well. Sean's a good drummer, but he didn't know, our stuff, and we'd never even practiced. We're just up there. And then Joe Splon was on keyboards for part of Taking Care of Business, and then he just disappeared. Strange deal. And then Sean was trying to play Amanda at some up-tempo, just banging away, just everything all at once. Hi-hat, or ride cymbals, and so we did Amanda, and that just didn't really. But we did Shine, and it was pretty good, and Taking Care of Business was pretty good. We tried Freebird, and I messed up swapped some verses. That embarrassed me to no end, but I don't know if anybody really noticed.
We played Texas Nightlife, and we played what was that? Freebird there. Remember that?
Yeah, but you weren't there.
I was too. I played there.
You had to work that night.
We played there. Y'all played there twice. You had the first guy that played Amanda.
Twice? I don't even remember once.
No, I think we played there twice because I remember y'all playing Freebird and I was on the stage. I think we played there twice. Now that I'm thinking.
Wow.
I think we did. Goes to show you, man, when the memories start coming back. But anyway.
I'd actually come back around after I did leave and kind of tried to jam and play with the guys again. And of course, we never quit being friends. And of course, later on, ended up playing together in all these other bands for years. But
and then John left. He quit. As was his way. And so then we were down to 3 guys, just Philip, myself, and Jason. So, we had a 3-piece shortly there. And then ultimately, not only being down to 3 people, we might have been able to carry on and still be pretty good, but 300 rent, all of a sudden you're paying 100 a piece, and so we eventually got rid of that place too. But then John up and quit. He got with Stephanie, this high school, 17-year-old girl in high school. He got with her, and she was a really demanding kind of person, kind of one of those controlling chicks, and kind of put him in a pickle where he had to, it's me or the band kind of deal. A lot of people are like that. They want your time, and so he up and quit. And one of the things that got us, we'd just been kind of burned by Joe quitting, and then John quits, but John didn't even tell us, and just didn't show up, and just didn't pay his rent, and so he left us with having to pay rent, and there were several other factors in there, but it's been so long you forget a lot of the details. But it seemed like a laundry list for us of things that he left us, high and dry, stuck with this, and this, and didn't tell us, and just, so we were all pretty unhappy about that. And that pretty much put an end to the whole thing. That was about the end of Revolver. But after that, we kept making demos.
And Joe left. It was like, it's over, it's done. And it pretty much was. It really pretty much was done. We can sit there and sugarcoat it as much as we want to and say, no, it wasn't. But it was done. When somebody that has that creative, artistic ability leaves a group where you have that much chemistry, there's no telling how many bars gigs we could have had.
Yeah.
With us, with newer equipment, because the newer equipment was right around the corner. Which the newer equipment came after we went to Dave's Drum World, after he was out. And I think Dave's Drum World was about the post-Joe era, where we were just trying to do 3 pieces. And we actually rented the place out. And then in hopes that Joe would take us serious, because he was playing these gigs and making this money and moonlighting with Dickie and all that stuff. I think Dickie might have even been in the picture, starting to be in the picture.
So yeah, Joe quitting. I mean, that's one that everything's fine now. We've all gone on to play together in different bands, and we're still best friends. Have been all these years, so it's all fine. But at the time, man, it's really, you got to talk about it because it's key to Revolver. I mean, that really killed it, and not to throw all the blame on him, but as soon as he was done, there was really no. We tried a few different lineups, and it just wasn't going to work. It had to be the original four, or not at all.
Yeah, John quitting. It was.
What made him quit?
I can't even remember. What was it? I can't remember what made him quit.
It was Stephanie.
Was it? I couldn't remember because like I said, man, I forgot half that crap.
It was an indication of, I think, how much talent we had collectively as a group, and it was just the beginning. It kind of shows you how far we could have gone, but ultimately, that album was actually the breakup period of the band. So, sadly enough, other demos for Revolver 3 are out there, but that would be the end of it for that group. And of course, we'd go on to other things together.
I remember we went back and tried to remaster with that Ron guy, and remember that? He had a BR8 or something.
Ron Horsler.
Yeah, whatever it is. I don't even.
Ron Horse's ass.
Ron Horse's ass. Yeah, that guy's a real jackass. Stole our freaking mics and everything. And you warned me about him. I was just too trusting back in those days. But
yeah, you at least back then, you kind of like John Lennon. You kind of went for the new shiny thing. Like, hey, this guy's nice. He's great.
Yeah, he's cool. And we actually played that show at Old Town back in the day when
we took turns. Like,
yeah. Do you remember that?
You'd sit in with him, and then the next week I'd sit in with him. The one week Joe would sit in with him.
Yeah, and I think at the time John was in the picture, and we weren't talking to him for several months, and he showed up out there, and we all started talking again.
So Revolver had so much youth and potential, energy, creativity, but really just couldn't overcome all the jank that was flying around, and just couldn't. Not enough discipline, and wasted time, way too much wasted time.
Had a lot of material. I mean, I guarantee you, if we did a Revolver album, we could probably put as many songs, probably 20 plus songs at least.
Double album.
Yeah, make a double album. That would take forever.
So, why, after 20 years, why are we talking about Revolver, which some people could say was a failure of our little garage?
Because it was fun for us, and it was something we enjoyed and cared about, and it was a big deal. We never wanted it to end. We never did, but with life happening and stuff, eventually everything does. But I think it ended prematurely. I mean, I think we could have had several years. I think we could have been a good touring band. Maybe even, who knows, we might even went, got on the music stations and stuff, on the radio.
So, to certain critics, whether it's a Justin or, people that weren't there that have a critical, negative view, why 20 years later, what's so special about that?
Because it was a bunch of friends writing music and enjoying each other's company. That's basically what it was. It was everybody coming together and being creative. We all had, even at the end of the day, we had fights, but we respected each other. And it was a dream of all of ours. And it was like a dream to come true to play in a band, and it actually happened. Whether we didn't get the glamour and all that stuff, we still had a dream, and we actually lived our dream, and we continued to after even Revolver. But Revolver was just special. It was 4 kids getting together and playing music and just having fun, and for that I'll be grateful forever, because I always wanted to be in a band, and
look where we are now. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it now, 20 years, like you said, after the fact. We've been in 2 different bands together since then. Joe's been with several different bands and Matt, and we still talk about it to this day. I mean, because that's where is our foundation for our musical career. So it's very important to Justin or whoever. They don't care. I mean, they weren't there. For us, it was our foundation. It was what made us, come together and be musicians and be friends and stuff.
Could you say that it launched a number of other bands?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that group. I mean, like I was saying, you got all the members played in successful bands that paying gig bands that would go to Oklahoma City. I mean, y'all played for a group of 2,000. You were telling me earlier. I mean, you got Joe was playing in Southern County Line. They were really big back in the early 2000s. And I mean, what's crazy is this was all 3 to 4 years removed from Revolver. So Revolver started in 99. By 2000, 2001, it was done.
I really regret leaving Revolver, and at the time, it was a really hard decision to make to do. And such great friends too. Even to this day, I still regret it because I felt like we had a lot of good songs and talent and had a good direction. Even though I felt like we were driving down a one-way street that was going to dead end at some point.
I think really Revolver was the most fun that we'd all ever had because it was, being young and it was the first band and the first time. It's something you really can't duplicate. We went on to do Brother Sharp and a lot of other bands, had a lot of fun shows, a lot of great times. But, nothing ever tops Revolver in that point in time in that group, and the feeling and the energy just can't ever be duplicated.
Part of what makes Revolver special is that it was a band that didn't go anywhere, didn't make it big, didn't get a record deal, wasn't rich and famous, but yet we're still talking about it over 20 years later. It was everybody's first band. It was just exciting and brand new. And it basically launched all of our careers. We all went on to play in multiple bands afterwards and lots of gigs and everything. And it all started with Revolver.
It's crazy though, we made an impact in a short period of time. Magic, the Byers gig, that was something that not a lot of people experienced.
I didn't really know how everybody felt about my leaving the band, and I think at the time I probably thought that most people really wouldn't notice or care that much. And looking back on it, I can say that I guess it probably stung pretty bad. Wasn't trying to hurt anybody or upset anyone by doing it. Luckily we all still stayed friends, was able to play together in other bands down the road. No harm done. I'm grateful for that because, I know a lot of people, that's not always the case. Sometimes it can burn bridges. But You know, I know probably at the time I didn't realize the magnitude of what I was doing and what it caused.
I'm gonna walk away, but I won't forget. Condescend. The way you say my name on a cigarette. Yeah, yeah. Cut me loose, set me free and let me go. Cut me loose, let me down soft and let me down slow. Cut me loose, don't let me bleed, just let me know. Cut me loose, is this real or is it just a show? Difficult to see if you were compromising time. Tell no lies. I constantly regret not keeping things inside. Let me down soft and let me down slow. Cut me loose, don't let me bleed, just let me know. Cut me loose, is this real or is it just a show? Cut me loose, let me breathe and let me grow.